this first part, we'll tackle the use case of issue escalation between Jira Service Desk and Jira Software. As I'm sure most of you are aware, issue escalation is a major part of any ITSM process. Every day, support agents using Jira Service Desk escalate customer tickets to development teams where the problem can be fixed. This can be pretty straightforward on small Jira instances, which may only have a couple of different development projects. But in reality, there are often dozens of software projects to choose from and a lot of details to share from the portal to the development team. In such cases, the process of issue escalation can become overwhelming and lead to mistakes. So, in the first part of this demonstration, I'm going to show you how one can use Elements Copy and Sync for Jira Cloud in order to make issue escalation as quickly and efficiently as possible. So, what we have here is a support ticket raised by a customer through the Jira Service Desk portal. As you can see, it contains all the information you might expect to see in such a ticket, such as a summary, a description, and labels. Additionally, the customer posted a comment here after their initial ticket was created with information that could be useful to solve the issue. Here, I'm connected as a support agent. My role is to escalate this issue to the appropriate development team in the appropriate software project. We are going to see together how Element Copy and Sync can help us do exactly that. So, to do that, I have created several copy recipes on my Jira instance. These recipes are, in fact, customized configurations which specify where and how my current issue can be copied and synchronized. So to use Copy and Sync, I just have to click here on the Action menu and select the Copy and Sync option. For now, I'm only going to show you the results of these recipes, but we will get to the actual configuration a little bit later in the webinar. As you can see, I've created several recipes here, each one used for a different purpose. And if I go over each one of these buttons, you can see that a short description is displayed, which explains the goal of the recipe. So I'm going to select the first one and click on Next. As you can see, the first thing the agent has to do is to select the target of the copy, which means the project where the copy will be created and the type of issue in which the copy will be created. So first, I can select among these projects to decide where the copy will be created, and then simply on these issue types only. So this is one among many recipes, and we can see what happens if I select another one. Let's try this one. As you can see, the result is a little bit different here. Because I don't have any issue type to select, this recipe will always create a bug. So, and the other difference is that here, only 3 projects are available as targets for the copy. So to continue, the agent just has to select the target among these 3 projects, the one which fits the most their need. Then I click on Submit. And we arrive on the native Jira creation dialog. And as we can see, we'll create a bug in the project Air Cleaner. And thanks to Copy and Sync, some of the fields have already been filled, such as the description, which is copied from the source issue. The labels are copied as well. And a link has been automatically created between the source issue and its copy. In this scenario, I decided not to copy the summary of the issue because sometimes it's better for the agent to change it. So I'm going to add a new summary here and create the issue. After a few seconds, the copy has been created by Copy and Sync. Before opening it, I'm going to refresh the original issue and show you what happened. Now that I have refreshed, we can see that the link between the original issue and its copy has been created here. But that's not all. We also have an issue cleanse panel here, which is dedicated to Elements Copy and Sync, and it lists all the issue created by Copy and Sync and related to the current issue. So the copy we have just created is visible here. Let's open it. As you can see, the new issue contains the information we can expect. The new summary is here, but the description has been copied as well as labels. Now, if a developer were to start working on this ticket to fix the bug, some information would be missing. Indeed, I have decided that with this recipe, I didn't want to copy the comment from the original issue to the new one. In this scenario, it's the role of the support agent to be the voice of the customer. So I'm going to go back to the support ticket as the Jira Service Desk agent, and I'm going to complete the description with the missing information. So I'm going to take this serial number, add it to the description, and I'm going to make it extra obvious for the developers. As an extra step, I'm also going to post an internal note so that the developer is aware of the update. So you may already know that internal notes are restricted messages, so the customer is not able to see it. And that's it. To sum up, the agent doesn't have to leave the support ticket to exchange information with the developer. And the agents can work directly from the helpdesk project. So I'm going to go back one more time to the copied issue and see the results. To refresh. Here, in the escalated issue, we can see that the description has been updated as expected. The new comment is also visible here. To make sure that the developers understand where this comment is coming from, we added a little flag above each copied and synchronized comment to indicate its origin. And as you can see, the key of the original issue is also available in this flag. Thanks to our recipes, the developers have all the information they need right where they need it, including the new information that may have come up in the support ticket after the issue has been created. So I'm going to sum up what we've seen so far. This is what we had at the start, the standard use case of issue escalation. And this is where we used Elements Copy and Sync. It allowed us to create a customized copy of our support ticket in the development project. It allowed us to guide the support agent along the way by restricting the number of projects and issue types available for the copy. And we showed how Elements Copy and Sync let us synchronize the fields and comments between the two issues to keep the escalated ticket up to date. That's it for the first part. Now that we have seen what recipes do, let's take a look at how Copy and Sync can be configured by Jira admins. What you have here is the welcome page of the Elements Copy and Sync administration. The recipes I showed you earlier are all listed in the recipe page here. As you can see, there are 3 recipe statuses. The active recipes are recipes which can be used by Jira end users on the instance. The drafts are works in progress that have not been yet fully configured. And finally, the inactive recipes are no longer live on the instance, but can be reactivated if needed. What I'm going to do is create a new recipe here. The first step is pretty easy. We just have to decide on the name and the description for the recipe. Both the name and description will be visible by the end users, so we have to make sure that they make sense. So I'm going to add a name and a description and create my recipe. Once the recipe has been created, the first thing we have to configure is the source. In this tab, Jira admins can define where the recipe will be available, or in other words, which issues can be copied by the recipe. There are many ways to define on which issues the recipe is available. We can narrow them down by projects, issue types, and status. These will often be the most common choices for Jira admins. So for example, I can say that only issues from this project and let's say these projects can be copied. Issues also have to have this issue type and be in this status in progress. Here, we can also add a JQL filter if needed in the additional filter field to retrieve exactly the issue we want to be able to copy. As an example, I'm going to say that only issues with the priority medium or the priority high can be copied by the recipe. Finally, at the bottom of this page, we have a configuration tester, which can be used to find the issues that match the configuration. So if I use this tester, I can see that 13 issues on my Jira instance match all these criteria. And if I click on the link, I can see that all these issues are listed here. So it's extra useful for Jira admins who wants to check their configuration and make sure that the correct recipes are available in the right place. So on to the next step. The second step in the recipe configuration is to set up where the issues will be actually copied. In this tab, we narrow down the projects and issue types that will be available to the user when they trigger the recipe. That's what I showed you earlier, where when in the first example, 6 projects were available, and the second one, only 3 projects were available. For example, I can decide that my copy can only be made in these projects, and that my only the, for example, the issue types that are often found in software projects are available for the copy. So a task, a story, a bug, and an epic. In the next section, we can set up the ways the user will be able to monitor the issues that are created by the recipe. The first option lets us automatically link to the original issue, the copy. All the existing links on the Jira Cloud instance are available here, including all the potential custom links created by the Jira admins. So I'm going to select this type of link to say that the created issue blocks the original issue. And finally, here in this last option, we can add watchers to the newly created issue. This watcher can be the current user, meaning the user who triggers the recipe, but we can also copy the watchers, reporter, and assignee of the original issue. Now on to the final step of our configuration. In this tab, we can configure the content of the issues that will be created by the recipe. To begin, we can decide which fields to set and synchronize. These fields can be added very quickly. So if I want to copy the summary, the description, and the labels, it only takes a few seconds. As you can see, these fields are added in our field mapping table. By default, these fields are copied from the source issue to the target issue. But it's also possible to do some cross-mapping and, for example, to copy the environment field into the description field. In this column, we can decide which fields will be synchronized between the issues. So let's say I want to synchronize all 3 fields. I can just click there, and below the table, we can select the direction of the synchronization. For example, from source to target means that if a field is updated in the source issue, its value will be synchronized to the child issue, but not the other way around. From target to source is the opposite. And finally, bidirectional means that an update in either the source or target issue will be synchronized to the other issue. If you want to configure things even faster, we can add all fields managed by copy and sync at once, remove them, add them again, synchronize them all. Well, you see what I mean. On to the next part of the configuration. In the next part, we can configure the comments and attachment. The first option here is used to copy the existing comments from the source issue to the target issue when the recipe is triggered. So if your original issue had comments, you will be able to find them in the copied issue as well. The same option exists for the attachment. The second option can be used for sync comments synchronization. When this option is activated, each new comment created in the source issue will be automatically synchronized to the other issue, and we can select the direction of the synchronization as well, and do the same thing for attachment. Finally, these 2 options here let us copy the links from the source issue. This can be linked to local Jira issues or external links. And we are done. I can save my recipe and check the configuration. Here we have a look of the summary of our configuration. I'll get to that in a moment, but what's interesting is the last option here, which lets us activate the recipe. Indeed, as I told earlier, recipes have several statuses, and they only become available to end user when they are activated. This means that if I close this recipe without activating it, I can see that my new recipe appears here in the draft table, but it's not available for the end users. To make it available, I can use this action menu here and activate it. Now my recipe has been configured and it's available. You should try it. Earlier, I created this issue, which contains many fields, such as a description. I put some labels, and I added attachment, a link to another issue, and a comment. So what we can do here is try the new recipe I just created. I go back to the action menu and the copy and sync option. Here, the new recipe is not visible. It's totally normal because if you remember what I configured earlier, I specified that only issues with the status in progress can be copied by our recipe. So I'm going to update the status here of our issue and go back to copy and sync. As we can see, our new recipe is indeed available here. I can use it. The target projects are the one I specified, the issue types as well. Here I copied the summary and everything else, and can again easily create my issue. After a few seconds, my issue has been created. I can open it. It may take a few seconds for the attachments and the comments to be copied, but yeah, as you can see, everything is very quickly created by copy and sync. So let's go back a little bit and sum up what we saw in this part of the presentation. This is the summary of the whole recipe. By using the source tab, we were able to define where the recipe is available, or in other words, what issues can be copied. The criteria we highlighted was the project, issue type, and status, but any specific issue can be retrieved thanks to the JQL filter. Then, in the target tab, we were able to narrow down where those issues can be copied. In this example, only these 3 projects and this 1 issue type. Finally, the content tab lets us decide how the created issues are initialized and updated. We can decide which fields to copy and synchronize, and whether we want the copy to copy and synchronize comments and attachments. In the final part of the webinar, I'm going to show you an alternative way to trigger or copy recipes. What I've shown you so far required an agent to select the copy and sync option in the action menu and to make a choice of recipe and target. However, it is also possible to trigger a recipe with no additional choice required during a workflow transition. To change things up a bit, we are going to move away from the issue escalation use case and tackle another topic, the epic refining. So this is an epic. The process of epic refining is incremental. This means that software teams usually add stories one by one in their epic in order to refine it and achieve its goal as best as possible. In this scenario, the information from the epic is often relevant to the issue within the epic. For example, the labels or graphics applied to the epic can apply as well to the stories within the epic. And if a fixed version is set for the epic, it often makes sense that the same fixed version must be set for the stories. With copy and sync, there is no need to copy this kind of information manually from the epic to each issue. What we want to do is to automatically create issues within the epic which contains information from the epic. I'm going to show you what we can do. Here, I have created an epic with labels here, a fixed version, and an important graphic. I have also configured a recipe which copies this information from an epic and creates an epic link between the epic and the created issue. As you can see here, there are currently no issues in this epic. To create these issues in the epic, what we want to do is to create this issue automatically when I use a workflow transition. So if I look here, this is my workflow. And what we want to do is that each time we use this transition, add issue to epic, a new issue is created within the epic with the relevant information. To do that, I need to edit my workflow. That's what I'm going to do right now. I just have to find my workflow. It's this one. Edit it. I'm going to go back to the diagram view. So it's exactly what we just saw. And on this transition, I'm going to add a post function. Here, I just have to select the elements copy and sync post function. And finally, the process is finished by selecting the recipe I want to use, this one, add issue to Epic. Now, I just have to not forget to publish the draft to make it available. And I can go back to my Epic. First, I need to be in the status start refining. As you can see, in the workflow, we are in the status. And here, my transition is available. So I'm going to click on it. The goal is that each time I use this transition, a new issue is added to the Epic. So if I refresh just my page here, it may take a few seconds for the link to be created, but as you can see here in our issue glance panel, the issue has already been created. So I click here, I can see my new issue. And if I open it here, this issue has been created within the Epic. The labels have been copied, the fixed version as well, and the link to the Epic has been created as well. If I look at the issue glance here, I can find my parent issue, which is the Epic, go back into it, and here the issue is visible. It only took a few seconds. Now, each time I want to refine my Epic even more, I can use this transition one time, two times, and each time this is done, a new issue is created within the Epic. Let's see the final results. And as you can see, the 3 issues have been created with the relevant information. So let's sum up. This is our workflow. And this is a transition where we use copy and sync. We added a copy and sync post function there so that every time the transition is used, a copy of the issue has been automatically created with the copy and fields, with a copy of the fields and the attachment. This is one among many possible examples of how copy and sync can be used during workflow transition. One or more recipes can be added to any transition in order to automate even more the work of Jira users, even during the original creation of an issue. This brings us to the end of this presentation.